Great question, Jane. You hit the nail right on the head there with that question to McCarthy. Why should fans buy in to this?
Well, to be fair, Rich, when you start anything with respectfully, which I did, I was hoping it would cushion it because it is a fair question right now. TJ can speak to it. Our engineer, Thomas, of the NFL Network, my father. I feel like people forget that I'm not related to anyone that owns the Cowboys. I can't fix anything. I'm not rich. So they come to me for group therapy, but it was a fair question because if you listen to Dallas radio this morning, so upset that Mike McCarthy is coming back for yet another year, the final year of his contract. I kind of felt like the writing was on the wall this week and that Jerry was going to talk himself back into it. After talking to the players, Rich, this team, they looked like they quit on him in that playoff game. They look like they've quit on him in several playoff games now. This is now 3 seasons in a row. But talking to these players, that was absolutely not the direction of my conversation. And, whether people like to hear this or not, Jerry is a very shrewd businessman. And I was told when he was frustrated last year, he didn't want to pay out Mike McCarthy 2 years remaining on his contract. It's still very frustrating for a coach. I know Mike talked about it today. It's raw. It's numb. This is obviously emotional, having people talk about your job before you even know the status of your job moving forward. But I thought it was a fair question in the sense, after now 3 seasons, sure, 12 wins are great. But how are you going to get us to buy back into it? And I think fans are expecting us to have some sort of Dan Campbell response, tearful and banging his hand down and saying he's going to go bite kneecaps in the NFC East this year and then go over to 49ers and do it the same. That's just not Mike. And I think the rub here is Mike is a good guy. He's a good coach. Is he a great coach? I don't know. He's won a Lombardi. They tell you you're a good coach if you win a Super Bowl. But for the fans in Dallas, I think there is a level of apathy that's begun to set in here a little bit.
All right, tons of follow-up questions. Let's start with the one that's, that arches over all as why Jerry decided to use the phrase Jane talked himself into keeping McCarthy. So walk me through best you can, because obviously only he knows between his temples what he was thinking. Why did he keep McCarthy, from your opinion?
I think continuity is a big deal. And I think Albert Breer hit the nail on the head when he talked about, Jerry doesn't have a quick trigger when it comes to coaches. I mean, I think a lot of people think because of a lot of things that he says and he's a wheeling and a dealing and he's always working on all these business deals. Look at his staff. There's people in that building that have worked around Jerry in the front office and some of his executives for 3 decades now. When you look at Jason Garrett, he kept him here in Dallas for 10 years. The only exception was Chan Gailey and Dave Campo, quite frankly. They didn't get a lot of time, 2 and 3 years respectively for them. And so I don't know if maybe there is a lesson in some of that maybe Jerry should look at. I mean, some of these other teams feel, look at Brandon Staley and the Chargers, look at Arthur Smith and the Falcons. They've been keen to move on. Look down at Houston and what they've been able to accomplish with DeMeco Ryan in his first season. I mean, an argument can be made that sometimes a different message is good. And quite frankly, they made a change with Jason Garrett. And despite that first year with COVID, look what Mike McCarthy did in years 2, 3, and 4. I think the big deal here is they only had 1 year with the Texas Coast. Think how many different offensive systems Dak Prescott has seen, despite there being similar terminology, et cetera. I think that they truly believe with 1 year left on Dak's deal as it stands and what they've been able to accomplish these last 3 seasons, I think Jerry actually still believes that this team is close. And you know this as well as anyone, Rich. The one thing that Jerry Jones is just abundant in, it's hope. It's optimism. I mean, hope floats could literally be a movie title described for Jerry Jones for all of these years. And so I do believe he talked himself into it. Now, what is curious to me is I respect the hell out of Peter King and Adam Schefter, but we started seeing these reports before the Cowboys got into the playoffs that depending on how they played, that if this thing went south, which it went about as south as you can go. I mean, this was Titanic sunk at the end of this game. Fans were leaving the exits before the fourth quarter. There was booing. That Bill Belichick would be in play. I've talked to a lot of people both in the building and outside of it. I don't believe that Jerry even reached out to Bill. Now, I know Bill wanted the job. I know that he was looking to have somebody that I've spoken with prep him if they were to call. I know that Mike Vrabel would have liked this job. It's my understanding Jim Harbaugh would have loved this job. And I think that's the most frustrating part of all of this for the fans right now, Rich. this does hit different, because in years past, the argument you would make was, well, if it's not Jason Garrett or it's not Mike McCarthy, who are you going to go and get? Well, this year you had a couple of really good options, and Jerry still decided to stay with Mike McCarthy. So I think that should tell you his thoughts on Mike McCarthy, and maybe whether he's frustrated and mad, there's still this part of him that says, do I really want to reboot this thing, or are we close? And I think Jerry always thinks he's close.
Yes, because Belichick's out there and Vrabel's out there and Harbaugh's out there, and so you're going to just do the same thing again. So I know this is still quite fluid. Is McCarthy going to go into this season with just nothing after this contractual season? That's it? There's no extension coming?
It doesn't sound like there's an extension. If you'll remember, our boy Ian Rappaport, right before the Dolphins game, was talking about legitimate bona fide discussions about Mike getting an extension. So, it's peaks and valleys here in Dallas, Rich. I've described it sometimes for fans and even my own father. It's like a toxic relationship. There's love bombing. You get, a lot of love and support early on, and then they just ghost you in the postseason. There's gaslighting. You didn't see the product on the field. No, we're still a good team. We've got 12 wins, even though for a fact, your eyes show you that the postseason isn't where it needs to be. And then there's real high highs because you get all these players that are going to the Pro Bowl, Dak's having an MVP type year, and then the low lows because those guys don't show up in the postseason sometimes. So, I think some of us are just immune and used to it.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.